Hello, I'm Susan and welcome to Susan Stanley Stitch in Time, episode number 53. On this channel I talk about cross stitch and quilting and sewing notions and methods and all kinds of stitchy textile goodness from the past. So I'm pleased you're here with me today. I wanted to pop in September, Sampler September Soiree, to just give you a quick update and to introduce you a little more to Faraby, the young girl that I'm crafting a story around this year. If you've been with me, you know I've got two young girls that I'm crafting stitching stories around to help us get a glimpse at the way things were done in the past and the type of stitching that young children would have likely done, and also trying to explore the methods that they would have used. So today we're going to look at an update on what I've been stitching. We're going to look a little bit more at Faraby, and then I have another Trousseau quilt that I've talked to you about before that I want to introduce to you again and talk about. So I'm so glad you're here, and if you're new, thank you for joining me. This will be a little bit of a shorter episode, but I just wanted to pop in. So I'm going to wear my glasses because my printer's not working and I couldn't print my show notes, so I'm having to read them off of my phone. So forgive me for that. If you want to just sit back and listen, this is a great episode to do that. So grab your stitching and something, whatever you like to drink while you're stitching, and join me. So as I mentioned, for several episodes I've been talking about Corliss. And Corliss is my fictional girl who lives in Louisville, Kentucky. And the time period that I've been focusing on this year is 1870. And she's been busy in the last few episodes, starting at episode 47, for those of you who might want to catch up. She's been busy learning how to do English paper piecing and learning how to make hexagon units and flowers, and then build beyond that. She's been learning from her Aunt Edith, who she's gone to live with. And in the last few episodes, she's been also learning how to make things to prepare her trousseau, which is things that she's starting to make as a young preteen girl to store away in a trunk, so that when she sets up a household someday in the future, she's ready to go. We're going to continue her story, and we're not leaving Corliss. Corliss is going to keep popping back into the picture. We still have a lot more to do with Corliss. But today I want to talk to you about her younger stepsister, who is Faraby. So far we really haven't talked too much about Faraby, other than when I mentioned her. I've had a lot of people ask me, where did I get the name Faraby? How did I come up with that? And Faraby was a name that was popular in the mid 1700s, and then it kind of waxed and waned away from popularity and became popular again in the mid 1800s, especially in Virginia and North Carolina. And it's thought that it's probably a derivation of Phoebe, the name Phoebe. And it means someone who is spontaneous and friendly. Now, I don't know if Faraby looks too friendly right there. She looks like a little bit put out, possibly. But and these pictures are from the Library of Congress, and they're just, mystery people who lived in a time long ago that I'm trying to bring back to life. The origins of her name are likely Irish, and there are several different spellings, and I've had people reach out to me and say that they have ancestors who are named Faraby, spelled a little bit differently than this. My girl is Pharaby, and she came from a friend. A friend had this name in her ancestry, and I thought it was unique and clever and creative, and so I wanted to use it. Excuse me. So we first meet Faraby in Boyette, Kentucky. She's 8 years old, and she's lost her father during the Civil War conflict. And soon after the war ended, her mother remarried, and she also lost some of her brothers. So just like Corliss. This is very common. Her mother remarried, and her new husband was a neighbor and a widower who was farming hemp and was a broker with one surviving daughter named Corliss. So that's how Corliss and Faraby came to meet. And not long after they set up household, Corliss was sent to live with her Aunt Edith in Louisville, and Faraby was again alone on the farm with no one to play with. Now, in spite of early tensions in the home, Faraby kind of misses having Corliss around and thinks about the short time they had together. And some of Corliss's playthings and dresses were left behind in an old trunk that was said to have belonged to Corliss's mother. Faraby's opened the trunk several times and peeked at the items inside. There are baby clothes, dresses for a small child, 2 gowns that she's sure belonged to Corliss's mother. She has studied the tiny embroidered embellishments on the collars and sleeves and loves the perfect tiny stitches sewn to hold the gowns together. And she hopes someday she will have dresses to wear that are as elegant as the ones in the trunk. Now, school has resumed for Faraby, and when her lessons and chores are done, she takes up the marking sampler in the afternoons her mother has prepared for her to stitch. She sits at the kitchen table while her mother is preparing dinner and carefully reviews her chart to count the stitches for the next letter. She's using 2 shades of red wool on a homespun linen, and every cross has to be made the same way. Her mother insists that she not carry her threads between letters so her work appears neat and tidy on the back. And it means a lot of starting and stopping, but her mother says no one likes to see the thread shadows between letters. It's very slow going, but she can see she's making progress. And much of Faraby's early stitching education, where she had learned to piece patches together, was interrupted by the war and a move and a new life. And her mother has now begun in earnest teaching her the next steps in patchwork and plain sewing. Her mother feels it's time for her to begin the next step, learning to put together some half-square triangles. Putting the triangles together correctly, making sure the points are sharp and crisp and not cut off, is a hallmark of good work. And Faraby's mother tells her this and wants her to live up to those standards. Faraby's been exposed to many forms of hand sewing during her life, and her mother has encouraged her through each skill: darning, mending, patchwork, and plain sewing. She's seen her mother make dresses, sheets, curtains, and table linens. And under Mother's guidance, Faraby has sewn long seams on a shift for herself. She's marveled at the delicate embroidery and fancy work she has seen done by the ladies in Mother's sewing group. Much of Faraby's day is filled with walking back and forth to school, doing chores and stitching on her marking sampler, and playing with her doll. She's excited to dig into Mother's scrap bag to begin her own patchwork doll quilt. This quilt will incorporate half-square triangles. I've been planning this next doll quilt project and collecting fabrics for you for almost 2 years. Collecting fabric is a continuous pursuit. It's similar to collecting cross-stitch stash. And having the materials at your disposal right there ready to use allows you to start whenever you want. And sometimes the fabric just jumps off the shelf at you when you need to begin. And so I am really excited to share the next step in quilting with you. And if you participated in Mary 1840 doll quilt, you are more than ready to begin the doll quilt for Faraby. Many of the techniques are the same, and the videos for Mary's quilt are still available for free on my YouTube channel, and we will be referring to those as we progress. Some new skills will be introduced. So we're going to take the next step in quilting. And this is the second quilt in a series of doll quilts that I hope to be offering to you that will help you build new skills and grow in your quilting knowledge. And I want to close with this quote by Brian Herbert. "The capacity to learn is a gift, and the ability to learn is a skill, and the willingness to learn is a choice." And I hope you choose to learn along with me in this next step, in this next doll quilt for Faraby. If you enjoyed learning about Mary, you're going to enjoy this, and you will use some of the same techniques, like I said, and learn some new ones. This is just an introduction, and more is coming about this in future episodes, and I'm so excited to share this with you as we build on this series of exploring early stitching and doll quilts. This project, along with new shop items, are going to be announced through my newsletter, which you can sign up for on my website, which is www.susanstanleystitchintime.com. I really can't wait to share more with you about this project. It's really exciting. So, what have I been stitching this month? You know, of course, I'm working on Faraby's sampler, which is one of the things that's been really important to me to get done. And as you know, I started this marking sampler. It's from 1871, so it's in my time period. It's Amy Florence Ogilvie, and this is a chart by Hedgerow Stitching. And I'm stitching it on 24 count rain barrel, which is likely the linen that a girl in 1870 or boy, a child, would have used for their first stitches. And I'm using wool, and I'm using these two shades as charted. I think as this goes up, it's going to be more of the red, the darker shade. And so the orange your eye will really blend that. So right now it's kind of popping out. But in the future, as this goes up, it will blend, and I'm excited to see what that looks like. So I've been working on this and kitting things up and getting this program, this doll quilt, prepared for you. What I'm noticing about stitching on this project, because I am using this 24 count, there's a heft to the linen in your hand. And especially as I add this wool thread also adds to the weight, and there's something very comforting about it. It's almost becoming like a blanket kind of a feel. So I imagine a little girl, and I imagine on a hot day stitching with wool, although this isn't like on my lap like a quilt would be, maybe isn't comfortable. And I imagine sticky fingers, and mother encouraging her, or whoever's teaching this child, to wash up, and then just that guidance and that eye, just making sure she's not carrying her stitches on the back and making everything neat and tidy. There is something really satisfying about stitching through this 24 count. I can see it easily, that's for sure, but there's the resistance that the wool, I know I've talked about this before, that the wool gives as you pull it through the linen is just really tactily satisfying. So I am really enjoying this. I hope I might just stick with this. I don't know, because it's Sampler September. It's really tempting to start a bunch of new things and move on, but this is the marking sampler that I'm stitching in honor of Faraby. So let me hold that up for you so you can see. The other thing I've observed about stitching this is that when I'm stitching with silks, I'm very aware of how they lay over the linen. I'm very conscious of my needle and making sure it's staying in the same position so that they lay nicely and they fill in the holes. I have moved into 103, but I've mostly used a Vera Soie d'Alger, which kind of puffs into the square, and a Vera Soie 103 doesn't do that as much. And this wool is very forgiving, and so I can see why for a child this would be a great way to start. This is also the time period when Berlin wool wool work was extremely popular. And if you notice on Faraby's photo, the chair behind her is stitched. Needlepoint, I'm probably 99% sure it's wool and a type of Berlin wool work stitching. So anyway, I just wanted to tie the story together and pull that out. And then no fear, we are not leaving Corliss. Corliss is going to come back. Corliss is madly working on her trousseau quilt, as many of you are, and I am as well. But I did want to show you another quilt that I've shown in the past, and this is the elongated hexagon. Now this is something I have in progress, and this is done being stitched purely by hand, no papers. And this easily could have been done as an English paper pieced project, but I chose to do it as a hand piecing project. And this is something else that would have been a very likely option for a trousseau quilt, because it's a long-term project. It uses a lot of small scraps that are hopefully readily available for anyone who feels like starting a quilt. You know, we collect our materials and we buy them and store them. And people in the past, they didn't have that option. They collected materials from what they had or what they were given. So it's just interesting to think about times past and the options that we have. I've used lots of different fabrics in this quilt. I have seen quilts from the past that every single piece of fabric is different. So people were very resourceful. They traded, they shared amongst each, with their friends in sewing circles to get that desired look. So maybe it was, something desirable to show that you had access to all this variety. So this elongated hexagon is, it's like I said, a long-term project and something else that would have likely been a really great trousseau option. So I'm so happy to be able to introduce you to Faraby and give you a little bit of a teaser about the next step in quilting, which will be learning half square triangles to construct, which is a basic building block to quilting, and as we work on the next doll quilt in the series. So next time, I hope I have more progress on this. I hope I have more progress on the other sampler September stitches that I showed you, and I will have updates on the doll quilt and the other projects, the trousseau project for Corliss and other things that we've been working on, and the tea towels. So until then, I just wanted to pop in, and until I see you again, please make time for stitching. Thanks for joining me today. Bye-bye.